The package arrived at the Mono County Museum, wrapped in brown paper and secured with yellowing tape. No return address, no postmark. Inside, museum staff found a small piece of weathered wood, clearly old, with traces of faded paint still visible on one side. Tucked beneath it was a handwritten note that simply read, "I'm sorry. Please take this back where it belongs. The accidents won't stop until it's returned to Bodie." This wasn't the first mysterious package the museum had received. It wasn't even the 10th. For decades, parcels have been arriving from all over the world. Some contain rusted nails. Others hold fragments of glass bottles or pieces of broken china. A few have included entire doorknobs or window frames. Every single item had been taken from Bodie, California, and every person who sent them back claimed their lives had been destroyed by a curse that began the moment they removed something from the ghost town. The warnings are posted everywhere in Bodie, signs at the entrance, notices in the visitor center. Even the park rangers repeat the same message to every tourist who passes through. Take nothing but photographs. Leave nothing but footprints. Those who ignore these warnings, they say, will face the consequences. And according to hundreds of letters stored in the museum's archives, those consequences can be devastating. Bodie sits high in the eastern Sierra Nevada mountains, about 13 miles east of Highway 395. To reach it, visitors must navigate a rough dirt road that becomes nearly impassable in winter. The elevation is 8,375 feet, where the air is thin and the weather can shift from sunshine to blizzard in minutes. Even in summer, nighttime temperatures often drop below freezing. This isolation isn't accidental. When gold was discovered here in 1859, the remote location was part of what kept the treasure hidden for so long. William Bodie first stumbled upon gold in these hills while prospecting with 3 companions. They agreed to keep their discovery secret until spring, planning to return when the weather improved. But Bodie never made it back. That November, he set out from his cabin to get supplies in Monoville. A sudden blizzard caught him in the open. His frozen body was found the following spring, buried in snow just a few miles from the camp that would later bear his name. The camp might have remained a small mining outpost if not for the cave-in at the Bunker Hill mine in 1876. When miners cleared the debris, they discovered a vein of gold so rich it would transform Bodie from a camp of 20 miners into a city of 10,000 souls. The Standard Mining Company bought up claims. The Bodie Mining Company followed. Within 2 years, the town had 65 saloons, numerous brothels, gambling halls, and opium dens. It also had churches, a school, 3 newspapers, and even a Chinatown with hundreds of residents. By 1879, Bodie had earned a reputation as one of the wildest towns in the American West. The red light district stretched for blocks. Gunfights erupted nightly. The local paper reported that a man was killed every day, though this was likely an exaggeration. Still, the violence was real enough. The cemetery filled rapidly with victims of shootouts, mining accidents, and disease. Winters were brutal. Supply wagons often couldn't reach the town for months. Those who died during these frozen periods were stored in the snow until the ground thawed enough for burial. The Reverend F.M. Warrington visited Bodie in 1881 and wrote that it was a sea of sin, lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. A young girl named Rosa May arrived that same year to work in one of the brothels. According to her diary, discovered decades later, she witnessed 3 murders in her first week. She wrote about the constant sound of dynamite from the mines, the fights that spilled from saloons into the streets, and the way gold dust settled on everything like a fine poison. The boom couldn't last forever. By 1883, the easily accessible gold was gone. Mining companies dug deeper, but the costs increased while the yields shrank. Families began leaving for new strikes in Colorado and Montana. The population dropped to 3,000 by 1887, then 2,000, then 1,000. The post office closed in 1942. The last permanent residents left in the 1940s, though a few caretakers remained into the 1960s. What remained was a town frozen in time. Unlike other ghost towns that were dismantled for lumber or destroyed by fire, Bodie was simply abandoned. Dishes still sat on tables, bottles lined saloon shelves. Schoolbooks lay open on desks as if students had just stepped out for recess and never returned. The dry mountain air and isolation preserved everything in a state of arrested decay. Buildings lean but don't fall. Wood grays but doesn't rot. Metal rusts but doesn't crumble. In 1962, California designated Bodie a state historic park. The philosophy was to maintain it in a state of arrested decay. Nothing would be restored, but nothing would be allowed to collapse either. Rangers would shore up buildings that threatened to fall and protect the site from vandalism, but otherwise, time would be allowed to work its slow transformation. This decision preserved not just buildings, but thousands of artifacts. Every structure contains remnants of daily life from the mining era. The Methodist Church still has its pump organ. The schoolhouse contains desks with children's names carved into the wood. The morgue holds coffins and embalming equipment. One house has a kitchen table set for dinner, with plates and forks waiting for a meal that will never be served. These objects create an unsettling intimacy with the past. Visitors often report feeling like intruders in someone's home, as if the original residents might return at any moment. This feeling of intrusion might explain why so many visitors feel compelled to take souvenirs: a nail from a floorboard, a shard of purple glass from a broken bottle, a square head nail from a collapsed fence. These seem like insignificant objects, worthless fragments of a dead town. Park officials estimate that despite warnings and regular patrols, hundreds of items disappear from Bodie every year. Most are never returned. But those that do come back often arrive with disturbing stories. The first documented case of someone returning stolen items came in 1967. A man from Los Angeles mailed back 3 rusted nails with a letter explaining that his wife had died in a car accident 2 days after they visited Bodie. His house had burned down while he attended her funeral. His business partner had embezzled their company's funds and disappeared. All of this had happened within 3 weeks of taking the nails. He begged the park service to accept them back and asked if there was any way to lift what he called the curse. Park rangers initially dismissed such letters as coincidence or superstition, but as more packages arrived, patterns began to emerge. The items were usually small, easily pocketed objects. The troubles typically began within days or weeks of the theft, and the misfortunes were often severe: deaths, divorces, diseases, financial ruin. By the 1980s, the Park Service had received so many returned items with accompanying letters that they created an unofficial archive. One letter from 1983 came from a woman in Germany. She had visited Bodie as part of a California vacation and taken a small piece of wallpaper from the cane house. Within a month, her husband was diagnosed with cancer. Her son broke his leg in 3 places. Her car was totaled when a truck ran a red light. She lost her job when her company unexpectedly folded. The wallpaper fragment, no bigger than a playing card, was wrapped in tissue paper inside her letter. She wrote in broken English, "Please to forgive me. I meant no harm. The pretty paper called to me, but now I know it belongs to the dead place." A particularly detailed account came from a family in Oregon. During a 1991 visit, their 12-year-old son secretly pocketed several square nails from the Methodist Church. The family noticed strange occurrences on the drive home. Their reliable van began having mechanical problems. They got food poisoning from a restaurant meal. The father, who had never had allergies, suddenly broke out in severe hives. Once home, the troubles escalated. Their dog, healthy and only 5 years old, died suddenly. The mother fell downstairs she had climbed thousands of times, breaking her wrist and collarbone. The father's construction business lost 3 major contracts in a single week. The son finally confessed to taking the nails after his best friend was struck by a car while they walked home from school together. The friend survived, but suffered permanent brain damage. That night, The parents packed up the nails and drove them back to Bodie personally, a 16-hour round trip. They left them at the church entrance with a written apology. According to their letter, sent months later, the misfortunes stopped immediately after returning the items. Not all stories involve physical calamities. A photographer from Japan wrote about taking a small shard of mirror from the old barbershop in 1995. He began experiencing vivid nightmares about Bodie. In these dreams, he walked through the town at night, but it was populated with translucent figures going about their daily business. They ignored him completely until he tried to leave. Then they would turn and stare with hollow eyes, their mouths moving in silent screams. The dreams came every night without fail. He couldn't sleep. His work suffered. His relationship ended. He spent thousands of dollars on therapy and sleep medications, but nothing helped. Finally, he mailed the mirror shard back to Bodie. The dreams stopped that very night. Some returnees describe more subtle but persistent troubles. A teacher from Arizona took a rusty hinge in 2003. She didn't connect it to the string of minor disasters that followed. Her computer crashed, losing months of lesson plans. Her roof leaked during the first rain, causing thousands in damage. Her car was broken into 3 times. She developed a mysterious rash that resisted all treatment. Small appliances broke one after another. Coffee maker, toaster, microwave, television. It wasn't until she read an article about the Bodie curse that she remembered the hinge in her garage. She returned it with a 3-page letter detailing her experiences. The Park Service maintains they neither encourage nor validate these curse stories. Official policy states that removing artifacts is illegal and punishable by fine and possible jail time. Rangers are trained to tell visitors that the real curse is the destruction of historical integrity when items are removed. Every stolen nail, every taken bottle, every pilfered piece of wood diminishes Bodie's authenticity for future visitors. They emphasize preservation over superstition, but privately, many rangers have their own stories. One ranger who requested anonymity described finding visitors trying to return items in person, often in states of extreme distress. She recalled a man who drove from Nevada at 2 in the morning, insisting he needed to return a brass button immediately. He claimed he hadn't slept in 5 days because every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces in the darkness. Another ranger reported finding items left at the entrance gate with no note, as if the returners were too afraid to even enter the town again. The curator at the Mono County Museum, where many returned items eventually end up, has observed interesting patterns in the letters. The severity of reported consequences often correlates with the nature of the theft. Those who take items impulsively, especially children, tend to report milder effects that stop when items are returned. But those who take items deliberately, especially after being warned, report more severe and lasting consequences. Some letter writers claim the curse affected not just them, but their entire families, sometimes for generations. One of the most disturbing accounts came from a contractor in 2007. He had been hired to do preservation work in Bodie and decided to keep a few old bottles he found under a collapsed porch. He justified it by telling himself they would have been destroyed anyway. Within a year, his construction business failed. His wife left him. His adult daughter was paralyzed in a skiing accident. His son developed schizophrenia. His own health deteriorated rapidly, with doctors unable to explain his symptoms. He returned the bottles but wrote that it felt too late. The damage was done. His family was destroyed. He ended his letter with, "I wish I had never heard of Bodie." Skeptics offer various explanations for the curse phenomena. Confirmation bias leads people to connect unrelated misfortunes to their theft. Guilt manifests as psychological and psychosomatic symptoms. The power of suggestion creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. They point out that thousands of people visit Bodie every year without incident, and presumably, many who take items never experience any problems or simply don't attribute their troubles to the theft. Yet the letters keep coming. The museum has hundreds, with more arriving every year. They come from across the United States and around the world. The writers include doctors, lawyers, engineers, people not typically given to superstition. Their stories are specific, detailed, and often desperate. Many express deep remorse not just for breaking the law but for disturbing something they now believe should have been left alone. Some researchers have proposed more exotic explanations. Bodie's violent history and sudden abandonment might have created what paranormal investigators call a psychic imprint. The intense emotions, the desperate greed, the sudden deaths, all concentrated in such an isolated location, could theoretically leave a residual energy that attaches to objects. When items are removed, they carry this energy with them, manifesting as misfortune for the thief. Others suggest the land itself is the source. The area around Bodie has long been considered sacred by indigenous peoples. The northern Paiute, who lived in the region for thousands of years before European arrival, avoided certain areas they considered inhabited by spirits. Some tribal elders, speaking off the record, have suggested that Bodie sits on one of these forbidden zones. The mining operations, the violence, and the greed disturbed something that should have remained buried. There are also those who believe the curse is connected to specific individuals who died in Bodie. Rosa May, the prostitute whose diary was found, died during a snowstorm while trying to help miners during an epidemic. Some say she protects the town. Others point to the Chinese residents who faced discrimination and violence. Their bodies were often not allowed in the main cemetery. Could their unquiet spirits guard what remains of their adopted home? The most unsettling aspect might be the selectivity of the curse. Not everyone who takes items reports problems, but those who do often describe an escalating pattern that seems almost intelligent in its application. Minor thefts might result in minor problems, but those who take multiple items, or items of particular significance, report catastrophic consequences. It's as if something judges the intent and the offense, delivering punishment accordingly. Recent incidents have added new dimensions to the phenomenon. With the rise of social media, some visitors have posted photos of themselves taking items from Bodie, treating it as a joke or challenge. Several of these individuals later posted follow-ups describing accidents, illnesses, and misfortunes that began shortly after their visits. One Instagram influencer who staged photos of herself taking various items, though she claimed she returned everything, reported that her career imploded within months. Brand deals fell through. Her engagement rates plummeted. She developed chronic insomnia and anxiety that required hospitalization. The Park Service has noted another disturbing trend. Some visitors now come to Bodie specifically to test the curse. They deliberately take items to see what happens. Park rangers report finding notes from these curse testers who document what they're taking and why. The results, according to returned letters, are invariably negative. One group of college students who made a documentary about testing the curse all reported significant problems in their lives afterward, though they disagreed on whether the curse was real or coincidental. Environmental scientists have proposed more mundane explanations. Bodie's buildings contain lead paint, asbestos, and other toxic materials from the mining era. Perhaps handling these contaminated objects causes health problems that people attribute to supernatural causes. The elevation and isolation might affect some visitors psychologically, creating a state of heightened suggestibility. The stark landscape and abandoned buildings could trigger deep-seated fears that manifest as anxiety and paranoia after leaving. But these explanations don't account for all aspects of the reported phenomena. Why do troubles often stop immediately when items are returned? Why do family members who never visited Bodie report being affected? Why do some people experience problems even after handling items with gloves and storing them carefully? The Native American perspective offers another layer of understanding. According to some tribal historians, the land where Bodie sits was considered a boundary between worlds, a place where the physical and spiritual realms were unusually close. The massive extraction of gold and silver might have disrupted this boundary. Every artifact removed from Bodie could be carrying more than just historical significance. It might be transporting something from that liminal space into the everyday world. Current park management faces a dilemma. Publicly endorsing the curse might encourage more thefts from people wanting to test it, but dismissing it entirely ignores the experiences of hundreds of people and the cultural significance the phenomenon has acquired. The compromise has been to focus on legal and ethical reasons, not to take items while allowing the curse stories to circulate as unofficial deterrents. Meanwhile, Bodie continues its slow decay. Buildings that stood for over a century finally collapse in winter storms. Foundations shift. Walls lean at increasingly precarious angles. Every year, despite preservation efforts, a little more of the town returns to the earth. Some suggest this gradual dissolution might be intentional, that Bodie is meant to fade away completely, and human efforts to preserve it, like taking souvenirs, interfere with this natural process. Visitors today describe an atmosphere unlike any other ghost town. The silence is profound, broken only by wind through broken windows and the occasional creak of old wood. Shadows move in ways that seem wrong for the time of day. Peripheral vision catches movements that aren't there when you turn to look. Some report feeling watched, especially near certain buildings. The sensation is strongest at the cemetery, where weathered headstones mark the graves of those who died violently, suddenly, or far too young. The Kane house, where James Kane murdered his wife's lover, is particularly unsettling. Visitors report cold spots even on hot days. Cameras malfunction. Batteries drain unexpectedly. Some people claim to have captured unexplained figures in photographs, shadows that shouldn't exist based on lighting conditions. Whether these are paranormal phenomena or tricks of light in old buildings, they contribute to the sense that Bodie is not entirely abandoned. One theory suggests the curse isn't punitive, but protective. Perhaps it's not about punishing thieves, but about keeping Bodie's artifacts where they belong. The items want to return home. When separated from their context, they create disturbances that only resolve when reunited with the town. This would explain why returning items seems to immediately stop the misfortunes. The implications extend beyond Bodie. If places can somehow imprint themselves on objects, if removing artifacts from certain locations carries consequences, what does this mean for archaeology, for museums, for our understanding of preservation? Are there other sites around the world where similar phenomena occur but go unreported or unrecognized? Recent quantum physics theories about entanglement and non-locality offer intriguing possibilities. Could objects from Bodie remain quantum entangled with their origin point? Could disturbing this entanglement create cascading effects that manifest as the misfortunes people report? These ideas remain highly speculative, but they suggest frameworks for understanding phenomena that conventional science struggles to explain. The most recent development came in 2019, when a team of paranormal investigators received permission to conduct an extensive study of Bodie using modern equipment. They documented numerous anomalies, electromagnetic fluctuations with no apparent source, temperature variations that defied thermodynamic principles, and audio recordings of sounds that shouldn't exist in an abandoned town. Their conclusion was carefully worded, but suggested that Bodie exhibited properties consistent with what they termed a heightened paranormal environment. As climate change speeds up and extreme weather events become more common, Bodie faces new threats. Wildfires have come dangerously close in recent years. The Marina fire in 2022 came within 2 miles of the town. Smoke filled the buildings for weeks. Unusual rainfall patterns threaten structures that have stood for over a century. Some wonder if the town's eventual destruction cannot be stopped. What will happen to the curse when Bodie finally returns completely to dust? Some believe the curse might actually get stronger as the town decays. Each collapsed building might release more of whatever energy is trapped there. Others think the opposite. They believe the curse will finally end when the last building falls. The objects people have taken will become ordinary again. The letters will stop coming. The stories will fade into legend. But until that day comes, if it ever does, Bodie continues to wait. It stands in its arrested decay. It watches from its empty windows. And it remembers everyone who takes what doesn't belong to them. The returned items themselves raise questions. The museum stores them carefully, but won't return them to Bodie, citing legal and practical concerns. Some staff members privately wonder if concentrating so many cursed objects in one place might have consequences. They report unusual occurrences in the storage area, objects moving overnight, unexplained sounds, and a persistent feeling of unease that no amount of reorganization seems to dispel. The cemetery itself deserves special attention. With over 400 documented graves, and likely many more unmarked, it represents one of the largest concentrations of frontier-era burials in California. The headstones tell stories of epidemics that swept through Bodie. Scarlet fever in 1876, pneumonia in 1878. A particularly severe influenza in 1881 that killed dozens of children in a single month. The children's section of the cemetery is especially poignant, with small markers bearing carved lambs and angels. A park volunteer named Jennifer Wolfe spent considerable time documenting these graves in 2014. She noticed something unusual. Certain graves appeared to be meticulously maintained, despite no official upkeep. Fresh flowers would appear, though always flowers that grew wild in the area, never store-bought. Toys would be left at children's graves, but they were antique toys, the kind that would have existed in the 1880s. When she set up a motion-activated camera to capture whoever was leaving these items, the camera recorded nothing but inexplicable lights moving through the cemetery at night. Wolfe also documented what she called hotspots in the cemetery. Using a simple digital thermometer, she found that certain graves registered temperature differences of up to 15 degrees compared to their surroundings. These variations couldn't be explained by sun exposure or wind patterns. They remained consistent regardless of weather conditions or time of day. The hottest spot was always the grave of Eleanor Cody, a prostitute who was murdered in 1879. Her killer was never found. The Chinese section of the cemetery presents its own mysteries. It was separated from the main burial ground, as was common in that era. Many of the estimated 300 Chinese residents who died in Bodie were buried here. Most graves are unmarked. Local historians believe this area has the most paranormal activity. Rangers avoid it after dark. They won't officially say why. Those who have gone there at night report hearing conversations in Chinese. They smell incense and opium smoke. They see lights that look like traditional Chinese lanterns floating between the unmarked graves. One researcher named Tom Bradley spent a night in the Chinese cemetery in 2015. He was writing a book about discrimination in mining towns. He wanted to document the forgotten Chinese workers. Using special recording equipment, he captured what sounded like dozens of voices speaking at once. When translated, the voices were discussing mine shaft locations and gold yields. They mentioned names and dates that matched historical records. But the most chilling part came at dawn. Bradley saw what he described as a procession of figures in traditional Chinese clothing. They walked through the cemetery and then simply faded away. He left Bodie that morning and never returned. His book, when published, didn't mention this experience. Visitors continue to come, drawn by history, mystery, and the allure of the forbidden. They walk the dusty streets, peer through windows at frozen tableaux of frontier life, and wonder about the people who once called this desolate place home. Most respect the warnings. They take only photographs, leave only footprints. But some still pocket souvenirs, either disbelieving or deliberately testing the stories they've heard. And somewhere in the world, another package is being wrapped in brown paper, another letter of apology being written, another stolen piece of Bodie beginning its journey home. The sender hopes returning it will end their troubles, stop the cascade of misfortune that began with a moment's impulse in a ghost town. Whether the curse is real, psychological, or something in between, its effects on those who believe they've experienced it are undeniable. The curse of Bodie raises fundamental questions about place, memory, and the invisible connections between past and present. Can human emotion and experience somehow embed itself in physical locations? Do certain places develop a form of consciousness that responds to intrusion? Or are we simply pattern-seeking creatures, finding meaning in random misfortune, creating curses from coincidence and guilt? What remains certain is that Bodie continues to exert a powerful influence on those who visit. Whether you believe in curses or not, something about this abandoned town high in the Sierra Nevada mountains affects people in ways that ordinary explanation struggles to address. The letters keep arriving, the stories keep building up, and Bodie keeps its secrets. It waits in its arrested decay for visitors who will respect its boundaries, or for those who won't and will perhaps learn why they should have. The local police have their own files on Bodie. They don't advertise this fact, but they've responded to enough strange calls to know something unusual happens to people who take things from the ghost town. Officer Janet Mills responded to a domestic disturbance in 2020. A normally quiet couple had barricaded themselves in separate rooms of their house. Each claimed the other was trying to kill them. She found no drugs or alcohol involved, but she did find a rusty key from Bodie on their kitchen counter. They had taken it the week before. Mills suggested they return it. She doesn't know if they did, but she never got called back to their house again. Next time you visit a historical site, an abandoned place, or anywhere that holds the weight of human history, remember Bodie. Remember the letters, the returned items, the pleas for forgiveness. And ask yourself, is that small souvenir really worth the risk? Some boundaries, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Some things once taken can never truly be returned. And some places, like Bodie, might just have their own ways of ensuring they're never truly abandoned, no matter how empty they appear. What do you think? Have you ever taken something you shouldn't have? Did anything unusual happen afterward? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more tales of the unexplained and mysterious. Until next time, sleep well, and remember, some souvenirs are better left where you found them.